people are craving more meaningful connection, more real intention, and less distracted with, I think, the sort of dating scene or whatever people are experiencing before. And they're looking just for something that I think is just much more meaningful and connective and fulfilling.
Justin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Justin, it's nice to connect. I've admired your work from afar. I hope you're well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. First of all, how you doing? How are you personally doing through this time period?
I'm personally doing okay. I think we're adjusting to it. I'm getting to spend a lot more time with my somewhat newborn son. I guess he's almost a year now, but so that's been a silver lining for sure.
That's awesome. So there was something I saw that you put out, or the company put out, around the intentionalness around dating that I thought was super interesting. Can you expand on that for everybody?
Well, I think that what we're just generally seeing, I think, is that given COVID and people having putting their lives on pause and stepping back, and I think getting to take a sort of bigger picture view, people are craving more meaningful connection, more real intention, and less distracted with, I think, the sort of dating scene or whatever people are experiencing before. And they're looking just for something that I think is just much more meaningful and connective and fulfilling. And I think a lot of people are feeling maybe they're missing that right now. And I think it's accentuated by the fact we're all alone.
Right. And do you feel like because conversation takes even more of the forefront when you're not physically in the same place, there's a little more depth to that execution?
Well, I think we're finding, we are seeing increased messaging, and we're seeing things like that. I mean, messaging increased like 30% on the platform, right? In like April and May. And I think people are just looking for that connection. I mean, singles more than anyone, especially singles in the city, are like living alone in a studio apartment or with a roommate and can't go out, I think that people are looking for that real connection. And I think right now, continuing for people, dating apps and Hinge are kind of the only game in town. You can't go to clubs and bars and weddings and all the places that people would normally meet people.
By the way, everybody who's watching, #marketing for the now. I see a lot of incredible shout outs to Hinge. Andrea, to answer your question, it's that they want people to fall in love and not have to date and get married. And this way you can delete the app. So I'm seeing some of those stories. So please continue with the feedback. I'm retweeting. If nothing else, you're going to get free followers on Twitter. I know sometimes that's interesting for people. Hinge Labs caught my eye as well in the last couple of years. So to be very frank, I'm just making these very selfish, Justin. So I just want to know more. So tell everybody what that is and tell me what's going on there.
Hinge Labs is the research division within Hinge that's thinking a little bit longer term about where we're going as a product. And most importantly, I think essentially what they are is they're looking at daters and who's succeeding and who isn't and why. So I think there's really only so much you can ultimately do with the core product. I think of the analogy of like a gym. You can design a gym well, you can get the right equipment in there, but ultimately someone needs to be there alongside you as your personal trainer, giving you high fives when you show up, showing you how to use the machines correctly. And so essentially what Hinge Labs is doing is it's following people around the gym, looking at the super fit people, looking at what they're doing differently, and then trying to teach everyone those skills. And so that's most fundamentally what Hinge Labs is going to be doing.
What about for all the entrepreneurs that are watching right now? I think, what's your journey? Like, how'd you grow up? Like, what kind of kid were you? Like, what is your actual origin story to this moment right now, the 3-minute version?
Long story, but I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was a pretty rebellious kid, probably starting in high school and into college. I got myself into a lot of trouble single-handedly.
Why do you think? Did you not like systems and being trapped because you were creative at home issues? Like, what was your...
I was, until 8th grade, I went to a Catholic school that was
freedom.
Known as the most disciplined Catholic school in Kentucky. And I then went to like a more liberal independent high school and I think just
went ham.
And just went crazy. But even for those standards, I was in I think I broke the records for most detentions and also most AP classes. So that gives you a sense. I was like student of the president of government, but also they started an entire parent network just because of the parties that I was throwing in my house. So that was kind of my dual nature. And then in college, really, I went way too far off the deep end and really got into like drugs and alcohol to a level that was like very unhealthy. And then the day I graduated, actually, I just stopped drinking, stopped doing drugs, and was like, I'm going to put my life together.
Did you, just curious, because I think this can help some people watching,
Sure.
to do that the day you graduated, that means there was momentum with yourself in that conversation prior to that. Out of just curiosity, how much momentum? Mid-junior year, were you like, this is fucked up, I gotta, like, what, you know, like, because you obviously use that moment as the trigger. I'm just curious what got you there, because that might be able to help somebody.
It was mid-junior year, actually. It was early, yeah.
Just saying, Andre, you picked the right host. You picked the right host for this stuff.
No,
You're good at this stuff.
You know, actually, for me, it was a journal I was keeping, and when I went to do my study abroad in the UK, and I just remember like keeping a journal. It's supposed to be about all my travels and all the things that I was going to be doing, and it really ended up being like, I'm never going to drink again. Like, this is really the last time. And then I would find myself like going out the next night. And then when I'd go back and read my journal, I was like, wow, like, you know, I just didn't have a concept of how I think powerless I was, and how much there was a deep inner part of me that wanted to change, but just would get overridden every night when I saw my friends going out. And I think that really hit me and made me scared. And then when I graduated, I took that as an opportunity to shift. Then I moved, you know, from upstate New York down to Washington, DC, and found some really great people and teachers, and really set my life on a pretty different course. And
how'd you start the app?
Well, it's kind of related to that. So there was a girl that I was dating in college named Kate, and
shout out to Kate.
Yeah, shout out to Kate. And so we were on again, off again, and then at the end of college, we sort of just went our separate ways. And then 4 years later, after I'd like got my life back together and I was going to Harvard Business School, I reached out to her to try to get her back, and she was living actually in London with a guy, and told me it was too late, and I was heartbroken. And so I started a dating app, which really originally was at Harvard. It was just this thing that would allow people to list their crushes on Facebook and see if two people like each other, and that evolved into Hinge. I'm now married to Kate. Long story, but that she ended up being the one.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. In fact, if another 4 years later.
I love how Amy, for everybody who's watching, Amy on my team, you can't see her. She's like in the producer room, but she's right above Justin in my video screen. And when Justin's like, no, I ended up marrying him, I'm like, wait, Kate? She literally went like this.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
So another 4 years later,
I
flew over to Switzerland right before she was about to get married, and asked her to call it off and move back to America with me, which she did. And
what?
Yeah,
this is getting better by the.
It was a wild story. We'd spend the whole interview on this.
Can I get the Justin?
There's a Modern Love episode that Dev Patel plays me and Catherine. That's like the second episode on Modern Love now. It was sort of an adapted version of it.
Amy's doing the thing again, because I think maybe she's watched that, or who knows what's going on right now. But you're definitely winning, Amy, on this game. Justin, what about pivoting during COVID, like innovation, like, you know, obviously being an entrepreneur, I know that's like we're always prepared to do stuff. Would love to hear your story on what you saw, what you did. What did you not do right? Did you wait too long, or what did you do great? All of it helps everybody who's watching.
Yeah. So in some way, I mean, the first couple of weeks, I think we're pretty, you know, everyone was going crazy, and this is late March, and I think things were really, really uncertain. You know, we closed down our office. The things that we obviously started working from home at that point. We pulled back on marketing spend to a pretty big extent, because we just didn't know where things were going, and we wanted to hunker down. I actually think that was a mistake, because what happened was marketing rates got really cheap, and what we realized is people wanted our product actually more than ever. So so we kind of like turned that, did a 180 on that by May. And then, you know, really just making sure that we, from a social media perspective, we just went all in on how to help people date during social distancing. So that was I think a big focus for us.
Are there any marriages that you already know of that has fully happened through, you know,
just through
virtual?
COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw something today that someone wanted to work with us on a proposal for someone that they met during COVID.
Have they physically been in the same room yet? Like I'm looking
I think
for the
they've
full,
physically been in the same
okay.
room. I think at this point, people are starting to meet up. I did see instances of people like starting to date and, you know, commit to each other without ever actually.
I needed since I lost out on the movie rights to your actual story, I was looking for the fully virtual to like marriage moment, but you're right. People are definitely, you know, hence why we may be in this for the rest of our lives. Anyway, nonetheless, what about your own consumer behavior, just to mix it up for different people that are watching? Any new apps, any new shows, any new products you're buying DTC that have completely captured you? This is now you, just the human.
I'm sitting on this really nice felt yoga ball, which has changed my relationship with my hips over the last.
No, seriously, that's
it's funny.
Honestly,
like,
can you dig into that? Because by the way, I think people might skip over this, like chairs and standing desks and balls. Like it's a big deal. I mean, I'm like literally right now, like if you see what's going on in my hand, I'll show it. I'm like poking this rib because of soft tissue. Like the ball seating has been a game changer for a lot of my friends.
Yeah, I wasn't really a ball seater because if you have a nice office chair like that, I think generally that's okay. But I think a lot of us are home at our apartments sitting on like a dining room thing like that. And it's just we're not meant to sit like that all day. And so, yeah, I had to like finally admit that this is for the long term and start investing in my setup here and having like a screen at my height and a ball chair and a, keyboard down at my keyboard height. And anyway, so
speaking of like being honest with yourself and like settling in, are you surprised by how well the organization has been able to navigate remotely? Have you been disappointed? Are you stunned by how advanced the video technology is? Slack, Gmail, whatever it may be, like the tech stack for this reality? Have you been pleasantly surprised?
I think the tech stack has been, the tech stack is one thing, but I think what I've been really pleasantly surprised by is just the team's ability to rally. I mean, we measure employee engagement and it's generally strong, but it's actually never been as strong as it is right now. Well, this is kind of a moment that can really make or break a culture. And I think luckily we've done a lot of work to really define and document and live our culture and our cultural values. And people are just really rallying around the company right now to support it in a time that otherwise people could be like checking out. And so that's been really, really cool to see. And it's just made us a lot more conscious about how we create human connections. Because, we're about creating human connections in the world, but also internally at Hinge, we feel very much like a family because we intentionally create a lot of human connections. So whether it's the warm up that we do on Monday mornings where everyone gets in a room and we sit for a 5-minute meditation, and then we break into breakout rooms and people will share some personal story. Like the prompt might be like a moment that changed your life. And then people will go around, whether you're from like engineering or customer service or whatever, sharing that with like a group of 4 or 5. And that's just creating those cross-functional personal bonds, I think, is what really holds us together, allows us to innovate, allows us to share ideas across teams. And so that's been pretty cool to see.
It's a pleasure to be with you, man.
Yeah.
I really wish you well.
Thank you.
Hope we get to jam again, and thanks for being on. And Andre, let's get to our next guest. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks.